Welcome to Meet Your Nominees. This is Mariah Gullo from The Hollywood Reporter, and I'm here with Cameron Britton from Mindhunter. Hi.
Hi, how are you? I'm good, doing well.
So congratulations, you were nominated for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Drama Series. And this is Mindhunter's only nomination this
year. Yeah, I noticed that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it happens sometimes with the oversaturation of television.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I feel like if it continues the way it has from season 1, that people will just grow into loving it. I noticed that with Breaking Bad. It wasn't until around season 3 that you finally hear enough, like, oh, okay, I gotta see that.
Yeah.
And then hopefully people catch on, because I've heard a lot. I've heard a lot of wonderful actors and directors around the industry who are just in love with it. So
yeah,
it's great to hear.
Yeah, that definitely does happen. Momentum needs to be picked up, and Mindhunter left us with one hell of a cliffhanger.
It did. It did. Yeah, and it's sort of done interestingly. You know, they did not hire any TV writers. Anybody who was used to that sort of system of, you know, a show needs to feel this way, beginning, middle, end, each episode. We just want this 10-hour movie. The writer, Joe Penhall, is a theater writer, so the challenge was, can a show be interesting while people just sit in chairs, you know?
Right. West
Wing had a lot of dialogue, but the camera was moving, everyone's walking, sort of sharing papers and talking. This one it's just people in chairs, so you kind of needed a writer who's used to keeping things compelling without a lot of action.
Right.
And that was sort of the goal, and I think it just crushed it. So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Tell me how you came aboard for this project.
I was lucky enough to be 6'5". If I were 6'4", I wouldn't be here. It was the real Ed Kemper is still alive, and he's 6'9". So we had to put me in lifts. That wasn't something I'm used to, but it basically was a call. You know, self-tape, you know, around the world. Whoever's tall enough, who looks like him and can sort of pull off that sort of calm yet menacing, overbearing sort of feel that he has. So I did one self-tape. I'd gotten it, you know, and didn't have a lot of time, so I sort of had to tape the writing up, you know, the lines behind the camera. So I'm sort of reading them as I'm doing the scene. So then they asked me to self-tape again, now that it's down. And then they brought me in, you know, 4 times. So it was 6 auditions over 6 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
And did you ever have any hesitation about playing the role of Ed Kemper?
No hesitation, but I sort of suspected and was correct in wondering if 9 months of being in that headspace was going to take its toll. And it did. It was, you know, it's a long time to sort of be juggling those dark thoughts, so you'd balance it with, you know, ice cream or hanging out with your dog or whatever. And on set, we did a lot of singing and stuff between takes. You know, things kind of stayed light. Sometimes you'd have to go and take a moment to yourself and stay a little serious. But yeah, there was a line in it where he says, he was talking about what he thought of the victims, and he was mentioning 2 of the victims, saying he liked Mary the best, he was lukewarm on Anita, and that line was hard to say. Those were real people, so, you know, you kind of had to not study the real lives of the victims at all, because
really?
I sort of started getting empathy for them. So I couldn't do that. I had to be indifferent to their lives, because somehow that's what makes sociopaths so interesting. They're able to take someone's life and right in front of them. You know, it's with your hands, and yet still feel nothing for them. And then the weird thing about Ed is, while he has no empathy for human life, he cares what people think of him. It's sort of an enigma that, you know, there was always a mystery to find when working on him because of that, you know.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing about kind of the serial killer phenomenon is that the people who are trying to prosecute them or get a confession out of them are always playing on their sense of vanity or their ego. So they have no empathy, but they have a lot of empathy for themselves.
Yeah, they do. I mean, narcissists are, they are experts on one subject. As long as you're talking about them, and that sort of the interesting thing about playing Ed is that he's seemingly so gathered and engaging. But I bet if the subject veered towards tennis, he would, you'd see he's actually not too sociable of a person, but man, I've actually gotten a chance to speak to some of the people who were prison guards and watched Ed, and they said you just can't shut him up about the crimes. He'll be in the shower, just telling everybody everything, and if you are to go and try to tell someone else and he overhears you, then that sort of narcissistic control, the narrative thing happens, and he'll go up to a guard and say, "Don't tell my story for me, you're getting it wrong," or something like that. I'd assume if he sees the show, he would, just an assumption, I've never met him, and I would never be interested, but...
I was going to say, were you ever tempted to meet him?
No, I think I'd be going to look like an animal in the zoo. I'd be there to stare at the freak.
Right.
And he's not a freak, he's a person. And so my intentions wouldn't be true enough. I wouldn't feel good about that. I'd also be just as scared as anyone else to meet someone like that, and I wonder, because of that narcissism, would he enjoy to have somebody come talk to him about his quote unquote work? I wouldn't want to give him the satisfaction.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I also heard that you spent a lot of time in character as you kind of tried out the character of Ed Kemper out in the real world.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, I had to. You can't, if you're going to play a serial killer who was able to, he'd pull up, he practiced for 2 years having, pulling up to a college and inviting someone, hey, you need a ride? And if he did it the wrong way, they wouldn't get in the car if they felt a weird vibe. So he started learning ways to just, he'd pull up and be checking the mirrors or playing with the radio, saying, hey, you need a ride or something, just keeping it really casual. So he sort of developed these ways of gaining people's trust. And whenever I see a very cinematic serial killer, I think, how would you ever get a victim if they don't feel that you're just a regular Joe? So my job, in my mind, wasn't to focus on the sinister element to this. Nobody really thinks they're evil. My job was to go to dog parks and take Uber rides and go to the grocery store in character and see if people would enjoy his company. You made a character, and then you make your character's character as a serial killer. There's a mask they wear to seem human. And again, they are human, but seem like everyone else, I suppose. So that was really important to me, to just come off as friendly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the season finale, there's a really intense scene between you and Jonathan Groff at the end, the very end. It seems like you had to kind of unleash a different side of Ed in that moment. What was that like? Were you consciously making a choice to kind of have this climactic personality change at the end?
Yeah, that part really interests me, because when we were in the writer's room, they wrote that scene. It just kept evolving and changing over months until maybe even a couple days before we shot. It was almost an entirely new scene. The things that always stayed constant were the hug and then the spirit wife concept, which is just so strange and creepy, but yeah, it's such an interesting concept. But when we talked about that scene, we talked about basically Ed has attempted suicide to see if that'll draw Holden over to see him. And once that works, then the test has been complete. Yeah, it worked, great. So, how are you? What's new? It was sort of, the feel was, don't, now that Holden's here, who cares? It's great. I proved my point and I got him here. And that's hard to play as an actor. It kind of worried me. Like, I need an intention, I need a drive, I need a thing. But the scene feels pretty kind of fuzzy and ambiguous. And then at the end, when he stands up and corners Holden, suddenly there's just clarity. I mean, it just becomes this really sort of laser-focused, driven thing that we got used to with Ed.
Yeah.
And as an audience, to be lulled with Holden, to be on that journey with him, of feeling comfortable around the guy, and then he stands up, and that's right. He's a killer, and that was sort of his point to Holden. My favorite part about that scene is, and I never decided for myself whether or not Ed was intending to harm Holden or if he was just proving a point, if he genuinely was excited to maybe harm him, or if he was just putting on a show.
Right.
It sort of parallels with the beginning, the first time you meet Ed, where you expect a maniac, and then in walks this very nice, friendly guy offering you a sandwich, so you never know where he's coming from the beginning of the show to the end.
Yeah.
I loved that aspect of it, and I felt like I had to not know either, in a way.
Yeah.
Just let it come out. We do so many takes that we can explore, and David can edit it how he'd like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh. You have to tell me about the serial killer meetup between you and the other actors
Oh.
who played the serial killers on the show.
You heard about that?
I did.
And I couldn't help it. I was so excited to be doing this project, and anyone who was a part of it, I wanted to know. I desperately want to meet anyone who's played a serial killer and ask them what it was like, what your experience was, because it's not like playing a lawyer or playing a mom or it's a little different, and I bet everyone's experience is a little different. So Jack Erdy, who plays Richard Speck, and Adam Zastrow, who played Jean Deviere, we've gotten together a couple times and just chat about what it's like to work with Fincher as well.
Yeah.
We're removed enough from the project that we just feel comfortable sort of just saying our mind on what it was to work with him. And what we found is all three of us got a different experience with him.
Oh.
That he's that good at directing and reading people, that this actor needs this and that actor needs that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love hanging with them in general. I'd like to keep doing that, and whatever serial killers crop up moving forward, be a creepy little club. Be
Yes.
fun. Yeah. From what I heard from season 1, even the ones I haven't met, everybody was likable. All the serial killers they hired,
Especially
maybe that was
nice people.
Yeah,
Of course.
and that could be a sort of thing that Fincher intended.
Right.
Right.
But
But who knows? I mean, the character of Speck is, I don't see, when you watch Jack Erdy perform it, he's the one who throws the bird into the fan. There's nothing endearing about that human being.
Yeah.
And he wants it that way.
Yeah.
God, I loved that performance.
Yeah. That was really nightmare-inducing. Speaking of a creepy club, serial killers do have a fan club. There are a lot of people who are kind of fascinated and interested, which is why there's been so many film and television series that talk about serial killers. Have you been contacted by the outside world of serial killer fandom?
No. There's been a couple people on my Facebook fan page, because they can private message, who find me attractive, which is the strangest thing to be thinking about when you're watching those Kemper scenes. One fella called me a hot bear. And one girl just asked me to marry her, and I didn't respond, and then she just wrote, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I was drunk." I am so sorry, and And I said, well, you're taking it back? You know, but I'm already married, so, yeah. So nothing, mostly it's just been, people just loved the show.
Yeah.
And I think my goal was, every time I've watched serial killer interviews, and I've gone down that rabbit hole in life a few times. If you've ever seen Eileen Wuornos, she's in a room, in the next room she'll be in is the last one she'll ever be in. They're putting her to death.
Wow.
And there's this guy was able to make a documentary, like, you're about to be dead in 5 minutes, what's your last thing to say on earth? And it's fascinating and horrifying and terrifying. And there's a lot of interviews with those folks, but you always feel like the cameras are on, so you want to see the real them. Mm-hmm. My hope with Mindhunter was to sort of show the real them, but even though I don't know, I never met Ed, but just maybe a more relaxed, less of the mask sort of thing. Yeah.
Are you excited to be playing a non-serial killer in Fincher's next project?
Yeah. If Fincher hires me in another project, I'll play a lamp. I don't care. Yeah, but yeah, I think the killer thing will be done for a bit. I'm on a show now where I play an assassin, but you get from basically the first episode that this is an anti-villain. Oh,
right on.
He doesn't know he's a bad guy, and if he knew, he'd probably give it up. Yeah, I don't know when I'd play another killer or under what context. I really feel like I explored and got that expressed out of me. There's, with Ed, as much as you see a calm, collected character, on the inside, or I'm putting every maniacal urge I can feel out, and then just sort of concealing it. Mm-hmm. So it really felt, cathartic in a way to just be dark, So I don't know. Naturally, I'm just not inclined towards that. So I don't know if I'll have that urge again anytime soon. If I get to continue with Mindhunter, then, man, love to. Yeah.
Most definitely be back.
Yeah, enjoy doing them. Maybe not for 9 months straight, but
right.
I do enjoy playing the guy. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize how manipulative I was, so.
It's a new skill to learn.
Yeah.
Well, Cameron Britton, thank you so much for being here, and have a great time at the Emmys.
Sure, thank you. Nice meeting you,
Nice
Mariah.
to meet you, too.